I realized that yesterday I made kind of a huge mistake when talking about when there's a flip in the graph. When there's a flip, it does not affect the domain. The domain is still x is greater than or equal to however the graph moves left or right. The only thing that changes when there's a flip is the range. It flips the sign on the range. Today we are going to solve radical equations, and every type of equation that we have solved, we are always trying to isolate something, get something by itself. If we're solving radical equations, we want to isolate the radical. We want to get the radical completely by itself. How do we get rid of that plus 6? Minus 6. That will give us the cube root of x equals 6. Now we need to think about how to undo a cube root. What is the opposite of a cube root? Cubing it. So to undo a cube root, you cube both sides. Notice I use parentheses. I use parentheses because if this happens to be a negative number, your calculator does better when you put negative numbers in parentheses before you raise it to an exponent. So parentheses are just a good habit to get into. On the left side, the cube root and the cube cancel each other out, so we have x. On the right side, 6 to the third is 216. Now practice on your calculator. Make sure you know how to enter 6 raised to the third and get 216. The one thing that we do need to talk about is this part of the directions. Check for extraneous solutions. Check for extraneous solutions basically means there's a chance that in the process of solving these equations, we are going to get a solution that appears to work, but does not actually work in the original equation. Now, this is typically only when we're dealing with square root or fourth root or sixth root, because can we do the square root of negative numbers? No. No. And if we take the square root of something, it's going to equal a positive number, not a negative number. So with odd index, like a cube root, it's not really that big of a deal because the cube root of a positive number is positive. The cube root of a negative is negative. It's okay to have negatives with cube roots or fifth roots or whatever. Let's look at number 2. What do we need to do first? We need to divide by -2. The most common mistake I see here is people try to add 2 to both sides. That is not a -2. That is -2 times the square root of 6x. So we need to divide to get rid of it. So we have the square root of 6x equals 8. How do we undo a square root? Square. So square both sides. 6x equals 64. And then we have to finish getting x by itself, so divide both sides by 6. And if you're thinking, oh my gosh, I got a decimal, this can't be right. It can be right, actually. 10.67.
So you can get decimals on
Now, I should make you check this, but I will show you on a future problem what things will happen that will make you think that you might need to. But this really isn't that difficult to check. You would type into your calculator 6 times 10.67. That's 64.02, so it's 64. So -2 times the square root of 64 is -16. It's all good. It's all fine. It works. Let's look at number 3. What do we need to do first in number 3? Subtract 5. So the square root of 4x minus 7 equals -3. What do we need to do next? Square both sides. And I'm actually going to rewrite this down here. I'll show you why later. Yes, I just rewrote a step. It's okay. Just ignore me. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal. All right, what is negative 3 squared? Positive 9. If you typed in negative 3 squared into your calculator and you got negative 9, you typed it in incorrectly. You need to put parentheses around that. Negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. Now we need to finish solving this. We would add 7 to both sides and get 4x equals 16, which means that x is 4. Okay, now I'm going to make you check this one. So in our calculators, and actually I'll pull up my calculator right here, I'm going to do the square root. Okay, calculator. If you've already typed this in and you're thinking, wait a minute, yeah, you did it right. So the square root of 4 times 4 minus 7. If you're doing this on a scientific calculator, when you push the square root, it gives you parentheses. Anything in the parentheses is under the radical. So you need to put 4 times 4 minus 7 and then close your parentheses. On this calculator, you hit the right arrow to get out from under the radical. Plus 5. It's supposed to equal 2, but it actually equals 8. Why? This is an extraneous solution. It doesn't actually work. Now, I want to show you where this problem went crazy. It went crazy right here. Can the square root equal a negative number?
No.
The result of square root is going to be a positive number. So this line right here is a red flag that, oh, I am going to end up getting an extraneous solution that doesn't work. So if you're solving one of these problems and it's an even root, so you might want to point at this and say that this is an even root. It's a square root or a fourth root or a sixth root. If you have an even root of something and it equals a negative, it's not going to work. You can stop right there and write no solutions. Now, if you don't remember that, if you just want to solve it all the way out and check your answer every time, that's totally fine. But look at all of the work below that gray line that we could have skipped if we had noticed, wait a minute, something's not okay here. All right, we definitely need to do number 4 because a lot of people make mistakes on number 4. What do we need to do first? We need to subtract 7 first. When you're solving equations, you have to do PEMDAS backwards. So deal with subtraction or addition first, then deal with division or multiplication, then deal with exponents or radicals or whatever.
Yeah, that's a lot of things.
I know. Then we divide by negative 2. We get the fourth root of 2x equals 5. Okay, even root, but it equals a positive number, so we are okay. How do we undo a fourth root? Raise it to the fourth. I wanted that to be pink. Make it pink. So 2x equals 625. Divide both sides by 2. And our answer is 312.5. So on the previous page, every example, our first step was get that radical by itself. What do you notice about the radical on the right side? It's by itself. So there's nothing else we can do to isolate the radical. So now we need to get rid of the radical by squaring both sides. When I square both sides, you have to square all of that left side. Now, what does squaring things actually mean? You multiply something by itself. So this actually means x plus 2 times x plus 2. You cannot just do x squared plus 4. You can't distribute the square because that's a plus in there. It's not multiplication. So you have to do x plus 2 times itself, which means we need to FOIL, double distribute, whatever term you use to describe that. It's a little bit of extra work, but it's doable. So we have x squared plus 2x plus 2x plus 4. If I combine like terms, we've got x squared plus 4x plus 4 equals 2x plus 28. When we have x squared and x in the same equation, we need to look at the sign by the door and read that sign with enthusiasm. We love factoring. We totally love factoring. So when you see x squared and x at the same time, no, not fire exit. Definitely we love factoring. The sign at the top. Okay, we need to get 0 on one side, and we also need to keep x squared positive. So you're going to move everything over to the side that has x squared. X squared plus 2x minus 24 equals 0. We are now looking for two numbers that multiply to give us this last number, negative 24. Those same two numbers have to add up to the middle number 2. It is 6 and 4. And some of you are better at coming up with those numbers. Remember, you can think about 24 is 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3 times 8, 4 times 6, and then figure out which pair of numbers you can use to add up to 2. So this factors into x minus 4, x plus 6 equals 0. What then are the solutions? X equals 4, x equals negative 6. Now we need to check these answers. And this is why I rewrote the original problem, because we have to check these answers back in the original problem. Unfortunately, in this type of a problem, there's no way to tell which answer might not be the right answer. Sometimes both answers work. Sometimes one answer works. Sometimes neither answer works. So you have to check. But you can use quite a bit of mental math to help you check. So if I plug in 4, what is 4 plus 2? Nope, positive 4. 4 plus 2 is 6. And on the right side, you can do in your calculator 2 times 4 plus 28. And I believe that's 36. So you have the square root of 36. Does 6 equal the square root of 36?
No. Yes.
Yes. So x equals 4 is a good solution. Now let's look at negative 6. Negative 6 plus 2 is negative 4. Negative 4 equals the square root. Wait a minute. Can a square root equal a negative? No. So you don't even have to figure out what that stuff under the radical is. You can just say, hold on, negative equals square root. Nope, that's bad. That's our extraneous solution. Only x equals 4 is good.